Good evening, everyone. Let's talk about hip hop. Hip hop is language, it's fashion, it's culture, and it was all born from the music. You see, hip hop was born organically from the DJs spinning on the party scene at the discotheques back in the 70s. Now, if you don't know, the good mark of a really nice disco song is this nice little instrumental break in the middle of the record. You see, when that break hit, all the best dancers hit the dance floor. And what's a DJ's job if it's not to keep those booties boogieing on the dance floor? So what the DJ did was, the DJ said, you know, I want these people to dance. So he took that instrumental break and he looped it over and over and over again so that people could dance to the break. Anybody familiar with break dancing? Now you see that music, that beat, it begged for more than just dope moves on the dance floor. You know, it needed a story. Lyrics needed to be added, and not necessarily the lyrics of the original song. Our stories, hip hop stories, were birthed, and thus is the birth of the MC. Now, early forms of hip hop featured men as your DJs, your breakers, and your MCs. Women were there, we were present, we supported. In some cases, we were even stepping into rap battles ourselves. But it was MC Lyte who delivered the very first female solo hip hop album. That was back in 1988. Now, aficionados of the hip hop culture, we call them hip hop heads. Now, they would be disappointed if I did not mention lyrical contributions from a famous battle rapper named Roxanne Shante. But it was MC Lyte who delivered the first commercial hip hop album from a woman. From that time, from '88 on into the 2000s, women flooded hip hop. Names like Moni Love and Salt and Pepper, Foxy Brown, Lil' Kim, these names were all synonymous with hip hop music. But at the same time, the lyrical content of our commercial male counterparts seemed to shift. You know, gone were the early days of the art form where boastful lyrics just dominated the landscape. You know, a new risque form of lyricism started to emerge. Now, don't get me wrong, misogyny has been present in hip hop since the onset, likely because misogyny has been an ever-present facet of American life. It's just a thing, it happens. But you'd be pretty hard-pressed to find a disparaging lyric about a woman before 1995. Now, true, you had artists like Ice Cube who said, well, you can catch the drift. These lyrics are from his 1991 track, Steady Mobbin'. In that same year, another artist who at the time went by the name Snoop Doggy Dogg released an album with similar lyrical content. Have you ever wondered what that other P meant in Naughty by Nature's OPP? If you don't know, thank your parents. You know, and there's a rapper out of California named Too Short, and just about everything Too Short has ever released has been laced with profanity and disrespect and sometimes even violence toward women. If you need proof, check out his 1992 track, In the Trunk. It's not music that he's bumping in that trunk. It's a woman. So, you know, I had to ask myself, what was it that shifted from, you know, the mid-90s to the turn of the century that made the degradation of women morph from being the exception to the rule? You know, women have never taken anything lying down, all of us throughout history, and women specifically in hip hop have been no different. Nobody hit back harder than New Jersey's own Queen Latifah. She dropped a record in '95 called Unity. Picture it, the record opens up with these beautiful jazz horns, and then out of nowhere, you hear a bold Latifah question the listener, who are you calling a, fill in your favorite slur. But even so, for some reason, that record didn't get a lot of love on the radio. What was the problem with it? You know, did her message offend? Were her points a bit too sharp? Or maybe she just bruised a few egos. You know, when I considered what was it that really shifted in this hip hop culture, and specifically in hip hop music, two things come to mind. First, ownership, and then outlook. So in its infancy, hip hop was underground, it was independent. We were at the club, on the street, and maybe you might put together a mixtape and maybe it might get played. But the point was that the music was owned by the people who created it. Now, conversely, the radio stations, the urban radio stations that played this music were also owned by the people who inhabited those very communities that this music was affecting. Eventually, hip hop became a commodity. We lost ownership of the music. We lost ownership of radio stations. And when that happened, lyrical content completely changed. Now, of course, you'd still hear some crazy things on the radio pre-1995, but not 24 hours of programming glorifying violence and drugs and outright foolishness like you do today. Ownership afforded us balance. And when we lost ownership in hip hop, the scales just shifted. Now let's consider outlook. So the outlook shifted naturally because of ownership. If the person who owns the music has no ties to the community that music is affecting, why should they care what the content is? In fact, record companies seem to be investing in the most degrading and destructive lyricism that they can find. But sensationalism sells, right? And if that record company that's getting rich has no ties to the community that is breaking down as a result, who cares? Radio stations and TV stations, your music channels, they program certain things. It's truly programming. If your community has programming that only tells you that you are a whore or worse, why should you think anything else of yourself? So at this time, with the shift in hip hop and the shift in ownership and outlook, women kind of morphed into being props. There was this era in hip hop, it was really cool but a little strange, where everybody had a rap crew. There was No Limit Records and Bad Boy Records and Murder Inc. and Terror Squad, and it was all these guys, all these hip hop rap dudes, and every squad had to have, at least one rap chick. That's how you showed you weren't completely misogynistic. You had a girl on the squad. But those women were only able to shine because they placed themselves as a prop to a man. Gone were the days of independent lyricists who could just put out their own music, like MC Lyte, like Latifah. Around this time, it's also interesting to note that after the rap crews kind of started to fizzle out, female hip hop, female MCs, also called femcees, all but disappeared from the landscape. It was in 2010 when women made a return. We were gone for almost a decade. In the beginning, women were celebrated in hip hop music. We inspired the music. We told the DJ when we loved his music. We rallied behind the MCs with the international hip hop cry to let you know your lyrics were tight. Oh, everybody knows that sound. That's when you know that the bar you just dropped rocked the crowd. But then women just all but disappeared from this hip hop landscape. It was a curious thing to watch happen as I naturally lived through this particular era of hip hop history. Now, women like Nicki Minaj burst onto the scene in 2010. Now, you might take issue with some things that Minaj has said or done or worn, but that's a talk for a different day. Ideas to mute certain artists can and must go beyond muting things like R. Kelly. When hip hop was afforded ownership, outlook, and balance, women were celebrated as a rainbow group. We inspired this genre, we marketed this genre, we did everything we could to support. But when that ownership shifted, so did imagery of women. These women were replaced with a monolith, usually a light-skinned woman, maybe with curly hair, usually with eyes any color other than dark brown. Why was that? Was she regarded to be more palatable for mass consumption? Even so, she was still regarded as, insert your favorite derogatory term here. She got called everything that anybody else did. The lyricism did not shift, despite Latifah telling us back in 1995 that we never had to be that. So that's the end of the story, right? Hip hop was born and women were there, and then hip hop evolved and women continued to be involved. Hip hop got a little hijacked and women got dissed and we're done, right? Of course not. No story ends with a particular storyteller. We pick it up and we keep going. So here's a quick historical tip. In its infancy, gangster rap was decidedly dangerous. Parental advisory stickers were on everybody's album. It was something that mainstream America needed to shield white children in the suburbs from. No one really understood that these rappers were just chronicling their life experiences, not glorifying it. So rather than address the problems in these communities, it was first ignored and then jumped on for the bandwagon because those communities that were once the butt of jokes were now moving trades on the stock market. So what can you do to change hip-hop culture? You know, we don't all necessarily live in the hood these days, although many of us still do. But media is everywhere now. Those days of only having access to music through the radio or your TV music channels, that's gone. You can get access to music everywhere, from the palm of your hand to the back of your taxi cab. And word of mouth is still a thing. It still works. If you don't know what artists are popping or bopping, I think as the kids say now, just ask. Formerly Rap Genius, it's now just genius.com, always features amazing lyrical content from all genres of music. You know, you can even go directly to the artists themselves and patronize them and purchase their music. You do not have to support the artists that tear down the community. And if you haven't noticed, tearing down women does destroy the communities. So I've got a sample playlist for you here. It's on Spotify. It's real. You can look it up. It's called Hip Hop Is Not Dead. He said, she said on Spotify. And this has some of my favorite artists. So if you don't know where to start looking for some lyrical content that doesn't completely blow your hair back in a negative way, here's some artists you can check out. J. Cole has been a favorite of mine for years. And he's not alone. There's Kendrick Lamar, Chance the Rapper, Childish Gambino, who many of you might know as the rapper and writer, actor Donald Glover. And females in hip hop haven't gone anywhere. Femcees are here to stay. Rhapsody is probably the best lyricist in the hip hop game right now. Who cares that she's a woman? The girl's just got bars. You know, don't let the name fool you, Doja Cat. Doja Cat is an amazing lyricist, and the things that she's bringing with metaphors and similes, and sometimes those admirable, amazing, and even abhorrent alliteration, true tools of the hip-hop game are still alive. Even though it seems like it's a really big problem, the solution is so small. It's as simple as shifting your playlist. Thank you.